What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another Nick 4K video. Today we're checking out a video from Nando V Movies, and the title for this video is 2025 will be make or break for Marvel. So for those of you who might not know, I'm going to guess probably 99% of people watching this, they understand. The MCU, as Deadpool said in the movie, is kind of at a low point right now. It has its moments, sure, but ultimately it's still relatively low compared to the heights it was at around the time of Endgame. Now, of course, there are a bunch of factors for why the MCU is at the state it is, and of course, we've probably done a bunch of videos on them already, but today's video is going to be covering mostly the future of it, specifically 2025, and I think the two big ones coming out is the Thunderbolts and the Captain America movie. For me, before we jump into this video, and he kind of explains a little deeper about what's going on, I'm optimistic about both of them. Brave New World, Captain America 4, that one does kind of scare me a little bit, but Thunderbolts looks fun. That one I'm actually more optimistic about, but I guess we'll see. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Which one are you more excited for? But without further ado, guys, let's jump in. And of course, if you want to check out any more of my videos, I'll leave a link to that up here. You can check out the playlist. With that said, let's begin.
2023 was a difficult year for Marvel. Sure, Guardians 3 was a huge hit critically and financially, and Loki Season 2 was strong, but beyond that, I got The Marvels, which wasn't terrible, but was Marvel's first genuine bomb. Then Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania was a big, mockable mess, but hey, at least it introduced a big, new, memorable villain. Never mind. And then there was what I genuinely believe is the overall worst thing the MCU has ever produced, Secret Invasion. Just an absolute disaster, filled with baffling deaths, pointless reveals, and at the heart of it, just all kinds of awful messaging. So Marvel took 2024 slow. It turned out to be one of their best years since Endgame, with Echo, X-Men 97, Deadpool and Wolverine, and Agatha all along. That was the easy part. Marvel is now staring down the barrel of 2025, which promises to be its biggest year in ever, really. 3 movies, 4 shows, a bunch of other things. And as the internet's favorite Marvel show, I want to take a video just to talk through it, set some expectations, for fun. But before we get to 2025, 2024 has one more thing that's worth talking about. Now, I bet a bunch of you are saying, wait, they made a What If Season 2? They certainly did. It released around Christmas of 2023, and it was surprisingly good. As someone who is not a humongous fan of Season 1, I think Season 2 is a huge improvement. And no, it is not only because Justin Hammer showed up to do a Die Hard homage and it was great, although I love that. No, it was just, I feel, a stronger interrogation of the premise of What If. Episodes with actual pitches, like what if Thor Ragnarok happened but with Iron Man instead of Thor, which was originally planned to be a Season 1 episode, or what if Nebula was a Nova Corpsman, or what if Hela found the 10 rings, what if the Avengers assembled in the 80s. They even used Captain Carter to do a what if Steve was the Winter Soldier episode.
Okay, so I actually haven't watched What If. I do hear good things about it. I'm just not super... It sounds intriguing. It's just, I gotta take a chance. I'll jump into it one day and maybe I'll do a review on that eventually in the future. But this might be a hot take, but I think that they should do this, but with Star Wars. Make an actual Star Wars What Ifs. Remember a couple years ago when those were like super popular, and I did a ton of them back in the day too. They should do those as well. I think that would actually help reinvigorate some of the love back into Star Wars as well if they did more of those, especially if they hired guys like us, you know what I mean, like the writers on YouTube and stuff to make them, or to help with them, or, you know, be inspired by our ideas, stuff like that. That'd be cool.
That managed to work the Black Widow mythology into his backstory. And they introduced Gowry, the original Mohawk character with the power of an Infinity Stone. Sure, the ending of the season goes a little off the rails, but at least I think it does so in a fun way. And the stories drew from genres like neo-noir and 80s action comedy, and were inspired by connections between characters like alcoholism, or warriors from a hidden world looking for a family, or supporting characters who never got a shot at the prime time. So Season 2 was fun. Season 3 looks pretty promising as well. Between this and something else which we'll get to, it seems like the animated material is going to be drawing largely on the characters from phases 4 and 5, which is nice because most of them haven't gotten more than one big appearance. I think a lot of what made phases 1, 2, and 3 special was the small connections. Falcon, for example, shows up in how many projects in his first few years? He debuts in Cap 2, he has a cameo in Age of Ultron, he has a bigger cameo in Ant-Man, and then he's a main player in Cap 3. Compare that to Kamala Khan, a thoroughly popular character, but one who since her debut in 2022 has only made it into her own show and The Marvels. If this was phase 2, she'd have been in 2 other shows by now and an Avengers movie.
So for those of you who might just have started watching me recently, I'll do an updated tier list to all this stuff eventually. Probably maybe closer towards when the new Captain America comes out in February. But I didn't care for the Miss Marvel show. It kind of felt like it was a show that wasn't meant for me. But I actually thought that The Marvels was a fun watch. That being said, I did wait for it to come out on Disney Plus. So it was a fun Disney Plus movie. But I don't know if I would have been too happy with it if I would have seen it in theaters type of thing. So that's kind of my perspective on The Marvels. I think Brie Larson's hot, right? So that was a plus. I know that people don't necessarily like her, but I think she's good looking. So can't hate her for that. All right, let's continue.
And yes, corrections, Jackals. I know she was also in the cruise ship movie thing, but I'm not counting it because I hate cruise ships. We've already seen bits of one episode with Red Guardian going on some sort of road trip with the Winter Soldier. It also looks like we're getting a mech episode and more Shang-Chi and apparently more Agatha. If I could make one plea to Marvel, don't do the daily releases. Do 2 episodes a week. 1 a day is impossible for me and my fellow YouTubers to cover, and it makes the whole thing difficult for people to digest, and once a show hits the backlog, it tends to stay there. There's still time to fix this, Marvel. But okay, so that brings us to 2025, which starts with a very different cartoon. Now, most of what I've seen for this one comes secondhand, courtesy of footage of D23, but the new sizzle reel showed a few seconds, and I'm kind of optimistic. Do I find the new art style a little much? Yeah, but you know what? They're clearly going for something, and I respect that. And I enjoy the comic panels. I just think the colors might lose me. I like the inclusion of comic characters, like the Runaways and Midnight Suns' Nico Minoru, and I adore the Coleman Domingo Norman Osborn casting. I wouldn't mind seeing that crossover into the MCU. I think the new costume is fun. Seems like there will be quite a few costumes in the show. I also think that guy he hit in the head with a brick better be a super soldier, because that's the kind of hit that can kill you, especially if it's so strong that it breaks the brick. Looks like Spider-Man's going to need a really good lawyer again.
Which we'll get to. But first...
So, before we jump into that one, I want to talk about that last one, this Spider-Man one. So that was initially pitched as a prequel to the actual MCU Spider-Man, but now it's kind of like its own story. So I don't know why they decided to just, not make it a prequel. Probably because they were trying to do that and they realized that they couldn't do other characters if they did that, so they instantly they dropped it. But I remember freshman year when it first got announced anyways, it was being sold as if it was a prequel to Homecoming type of thing. Like we're gonna find out how this universe's Peter actually got infected by the spider bite and all that extra stuff. That was the initial selling of it. And then a couple years later, because this thing's been in production for a long time, they were like, hey, actually it's its own canonical story now altogether. So I don't know where that changed. I kind of was liking the idea of seeing the origin of this Peter, even though they kind of made it in the MCU anyways. They kind of explain hey, it doesn't matter. You already kind of know how he got it. You've seen it happen twice in 2 different movies. I get that, but I was kind of looking forward to that. So I will say that my excitement for freshman year is lower now because I know it's not connected to MCU, Tom Holland's Spider-Man. But I don't know. We'll see. Maybe it could be amazing. And I could be wrong, but like I said, we'll see.
Now listen, I'm quite worried about this one. For those of you out of the loop, Captain America Brave New World, or New World Order, as it was originally called, has apparently been reshot a lot. Now I will be the first to say, reshoots, and even day of rewrites, are not always a bad thing. Many of everyone's favorite Marvel things involve reshot plot points that are so consequential, you would have to assume they've been there the whole time. But when done well, reshoots and rewrites can make a movie better. But also sometimes a movie is bad, it scores poorly in test screenings, and it is reshot a lot, leading to a movie that is also bad, but maybe different. Like Madam Web got reshot a lot, and I don't think they fixed it. Sometimes reshoots are not enough. And I am worried about Brave New World. On vibes, I think the trailer's strong. In fact, many people who have seen this trailer that was released at D23 in Brazil agreed that the movie looks cool. I think this comes down to some very effective editing and slick-looking action scenes. I am very excited for the visuals of Sam buzzing around aircraft carriers on the big screen. I think that looked great in Falcon and Winter Soldier. But also, it sort of seems like Brave New World is going for the style of Winter Soldier without the human connection that made that story work. Without Bucky, Cap v Hydra can be entertaining, but the personal stakes making everything so much more complicated are why people look back on that movie so fondly. This is not a preemptive review of Brave New World. I just want to throw it out there that 2025 might start the same way as 2023, with a big, expensive movie that's okay. And I just know that if that happens, which I'm not guaranteeing it will, but if it does, there will be endless film bloggers using this moment to proclaim that Marvel is cooked. It's over. And I think, A, that is a wild take in the wake of Deadpool and Wolverine and Agatha all along, but B, it's February, and I've got a feeling the real winners are coming later. So judge slowly. Alright, back to The Very Good Lawyer.
Okay. So my thought process on, like I mentioned this earlier, I think that movie looks like it's going to be, I think it's going to be fine. Kevin Feige and the MCU, they're starting to take things more serious again. They're realizing that people are dropping off and they're losing money. They're going to start actually taking things serious now. And I think they're going to figure out a way to make that movie not amazing. It's definitely not going to be the Winter Soldier levels of good. That's one of the best MCU movies we've ever had. But I'm thinking something more in the middle. Maybe a little above middle, I guess you could say. So like there's like the low tier guys and then there's like the almost low tier guys. I'd put like Black Widow movie down there. So I wouldn't say Black Widow movie is in the true low tiers, maybe like right before that, and then I'd put like this movie probably right above it. So it's not going to be necessarily a bad movie. I just think it's going to be a very okay movie, and we're all going to kind of just look back at it as it being okay. Now, with that said, I've done videos on my thoughts on Sam becoming Captain America before, and I have like a longer video on that deep in the archives. You want to go find it. But I like Sam. I like him as Falcon. I don't know if he sold me on Captain America. I think the MCU did a good job of selling the idea of Steve Rogers handing the mantle over to Bucky from the first trilogy of Captain America movies. You know what I'm saying? Like, Bucky was supposed to become the Cap. Instead, they gave it to Sam, and I know that he becomes Captain America in the comics as well. But it's one of those things where, like, Bucky is a super soldier. It made sense. I don't remember them even giving Sam the serum. Does he get the serum in the Falcon, the Winter Soldier? I don't think he does. So, like, a lot of things that gave Cap that extra edge, I guess they're going to do more of like a tech thing, more of like a, not really Iron Man, but kind of an Iron Man type of thing with Sam, where like Cap didn't have as much tech, but he had that extra super soldier serum, so he was able to make it up like with that. Where I think Sam is going to be a normal human in like a tech suit. But I do kind of hope they give him like a little bit of like a serum, even if it is just like, it doesn't have to be like a super powerful one, but just something to give him an edge. Like if you remember the Incredible Hulk, remember the bad guy in that, he becomes the Abomination. Like before he becomes the Abomination at the end of the movie, halfway through he fights the Hulk as like a super soldier. I think maybe if they did something along those lines, especially since they're kind of bringing back the leader from that movie, to do that to Sam, so Sam can kind of get some type of power boost, and he doesn't have to necessarily get like a Steve Rogers power boost, but something along the lines of the Incredible Hulk, where that guy was still strong, he was fast, he got some type of boost to help him physically, but he didn't get like an overall overhaul like Bucky and Steve got. So something that would give him a little bit of a strength boost, but not like a super soldier boost, if that makes sense. Something along those lines. I think that the fans overall would appreciate that more. But like I said, that's just me. That's my opinion. I'm hoping for the best, but it's probably going to be a mid-tier movie. But like I said, that's just my opinion.
All right, let's talk about everyone's second favorite, Matt. My actual first name is Matt. Nando is a nickname. It's a long story. Anyway, Daredevil Born Again is many people's most anticipated Marvel thing of 2025, and for that same reason, it is the one that most scares us. Season 3 of Netflix's Daredevil is phenomenal. As close to a perfect season of television as Marvel anything has produced. And many fans, myself included, were happy to leave the series behind. Sure, Matt was coming to the MCU, but he could do what he's been doing so far, popping up in She-Hulk and Spider-Man with maybe a bigger role in Spider-Man 4 or a Defenders show, which would be a good idea since they never made one of those. It's a common misconception, but Iron Fist and Netflix's Defenders and, let's say, Jessica Jones Season 2 are all some sort of Mandela effect situation where we think they happened and even vaguely remember plot details, and it's even playing on screen right now, but it actually never happened. But it's no surprise that Disney thought it would be a great storytelling and also money-telling opportunity to bring back The Man Without Fear for a 4th season. But apparently, that was as far as the thinking went, because according to reports, the original Daredevil Born Again, much of which was fully shot, stunk. Matt barely wore the costume, many of the supporting characters were not involved, and the story just didn't have the juice to justify calling Matt out of retirement for one more big score. But then, something amazing happened. Marvel learned something. Like that TV shows have showrunners who oversee production, and TV shows aren't just big 4-hour-long movies chopped into 6 pieces. So they took Daredevil Born Again back to formula. And it certainly seems like they've got something different on their hands. Pretty much every significant friend of Daredevil's is back. And some fun frenemies, and even an arch nemesis or two. It seems like the story is going to feature the trial of a vigilante, something that shockingly never happened in the first 3 seasons. Sure, Punisher took the stands, but he immediately went to prison, so he didn't get to do any of the fun court stuff. Then we're seeing an adaptation of Muse, one of the newer Daredevil villains who has a recognizable look and gimmick, but a very vague backstory in the comics, which gives the team the opportunity to take some fun liberties. So fingers crossed. Everybody's where they need to be. I just pray that Marvel is able to get this right. Speaking of things Marvel's taken a couple of swings at, let's talk about...
Okay, so before we get to Thunderbolts, which I think is probably my most anticipated movie that they're going to be releasing this year. We'll only have 3 coming out. Yeah, I think this one's the most excited for. Okay, so when it comes to the Daredevil show, I actually forgot they're making that. I liked the older ones, like... I was going to say back in the day, but, you know, I guess that is like 10 years ago now. Those were fun, but it was one of those things where I was kind of okay with them moving on from it. I like Matt Murdock. I know that the fan base really liked Daredevil. I don't necessarily care for Daredevil. I won't watch the show, but I'm glad other people like it, and hopefully they get what they want out of it. So that's the best way of me just saying, like, I'm glad people are happy. I don't care. Let's move on. So, yeah.
I've got one word for you. Beef. One of 2023's most interesting and awarded new Netflix series was a comedy drama called Beef. If you never saw it, Beef is about 2 people who have a somewhat dramatic road rage incident that becomes the catalyst for their complete and total unraveling. It focuses on how a lack of, or perceived lack of control is able to eat away at all of us, and our relationships. So I was thrilled when I heard that Lee Sung-jin, the writer and director behind Beef, was taking another shot at the script for Thunderbolts. Because originally, I was skeptical. This Thunderbolt squad that in the comics is made up of colorful villains with wildly different superpowers is instead just going to be super soldiers and Black Widows. It's repetitive. It's dull. It's downright boring. Not you, Ghost. You're great. But no Red Hulk, no Zemo, just the sidekicks of Black Widow and Falcon. And Ghost, who again is doing great. I wondered, why this team? What makes them so special? And the writers not only seem to understand that, they made it the main character's defining flaw. They're spinning their wheels. In World of Multiverses and secret dragons and giant Egyptian god avatars, what are they worth? What purpose do they serve? And like the protagonists of Beef, our Thunderbolts believe they have no control over their lives. They're being led into these Black Ops missions that don't leave them so full or so filled. That trailer opening with Yelena's monologue.
There is something wrong with me. An emptiness. I'm just drifting and I don't have purpose. I thought throwing myself into work was the answer.
It is the most relatable a superhero movie has sounded in a decade. Couple that with an absolutely stacked roster of fan-favorite MCU characters like Florence Pugh's Yelena, Sebastian Stan's Bucky, David Harbour's Alexei, Wyatt Russell's Walker, and of course Hannah John Kamen's Ghost, who is, for a 3rd time, doing great. Taskmaster is also there. Then throw in Julia Louis-Dreyfus as a slightly less evil Selena Meyer, and whatever they're doing with the Sentry. I think this one could really deliver. So that's the end of Phase 5. And it seems like Marvel wants Fantastic Four First Steps to be the start of Phase 6. But that leaves one thing. In 2023, Disney...
Okay, before we jump into this, yeah, Thunderbolts, I think it looks promising. I'm gonna stay optimistic about that one. When it came to like the Captain America one, I was kind of like, ugh. Thunderbolts, I'm pretty sure is going to be. Of course, I don't think it's gonna be one of the best movies of the MCU, but I think it's gonna be pretty good. I think people are gonna be surprised by how much it's not that bad, right? It's gonna be a pretty solid film. The reason why I'm in the MCU still, or why I care about mostly, is because of Bucky. You know, I really like Tony, like Steve, like Thor. Thor kind of struck out for me last time around. You know what I mean? So I'm kind of like iffy about Thor a little bit. Steve's gone. Tony's coming back in a certain perspective as Doom or whatever, but Tony's gone. It's just one of those things where like the people that I held on to the universe are gone, but there was one person besides the main three that I held on to from the very beginning, and that's Bucky. And for a lot of people, I think they're in the same spot as me with this. Like, we all are still here because Bucky's still here. So I do think that Bucky will eventually get the mantle of Captain America, like I mentioned. I don't know if they're gonna wait till after Secret Wars or something. I don't know if that means that the Falcon's gonna die or something like that, but it's one of those things where they can't set up Bucky all these years to get that shield and then not give it to him, right? So I don't know how much longer they're going to go with it. I know Sebastian Stan loves the character and he wants to continue doing it forever. So that's great. Hopefully he wants to keep doing that till he eventually gets the shield. There's a lot of interesting ways that movie can go about, and I dig all the characters in it. You know, even if some of them were in like crappier movies in the MCU, I like them all. I think they're all pretty cool. I like the idea of what Sentry is. Sentry is actually one of my favorite comic book characters from Marvel. So I hope they can really bring him into the MCU and bring him into the fold and figure something out with it, because I think it could be really good if done right. My theory is that they brought Sentry in. He's potentially going to become like a bad guy, a worse guy, I guess you could say. And then they're all going to team up, take him out, and move on from there. But I think that they're not actually going to kill him. They're just going to have to knock him out and then put him in like a cryo sleep. And then later in the timeline, when they do the World War Hulk storyline, someone's going to be like, we can't stop this guy. He's going to destroy the world. Oh no. And they're like, wait, one person can stop him. And then they'll go unlock him and he'll come and he'll be like a good guy then. I don't know. A lot of cool ways they can go with it. Just keep our fingers crossed and, you know, hope for the best.
Disney made some changes. Sensing a public distaste for 5 shows and 3 movies a year, they pulled back, scaled down, retooled a bunch of projects like Daredevil and Thunderbolts. And they were careful not to overwhelm audiences, so they spaced things out, gave them room to breathe. And it sort of seems like one show got lost in the shuffle, Ironheart, because there was just never a great time for it. So it seems like Marvel settled on mid-2025, since this thing has to get released eventually, which means people online got the sense that Marvel was dumping it, getting it off the slate so they could focus on other things. I mean, if they were excited about it, why weren't they in a rush to get it out? And that may be the case. But the trailer kinda worked on me. And no, I'm not talking about the 5 seconds Ironheart got in the look ahead trailer, although it did have some strong visuals that we haven't seen before. But the leaked D23 trailer told more of a story. It introduces a Riri who, after being kicked out of MIT, joins up with some sort of crew that does heists led by Anthony Ramos's Parker Robbins, who in this goes by the Hood, but it probably makes more sense here because he's either doing this for the neighborhood or he's doing this as a Robin Hood thing. It always bugged me because the usual hood in the comics is named after the hood he is wearing, except it is not a hood. It's a cloak. But there's already a guy named Cloak, so they made this guy Hood. It's a stupid name. Anyway, heists are cool. I also think the Ironheart suit looks great. People have complained for a while about how the recent nanomachine suits look fake. But because Riri has to start at square one and she can't just 3D print the suits, it seems like creating them and maintaining them is going to make these suits feel a lot more real. And the suit-up shots look great. Is this the project I'm most looking forward to? Definitely not. But could be fun. It doesn't need to either, but could be. But you know what needs to be fun? Really fun.
Okay, so before we talk about
Fantastic
Four, Ironheart looks interesting, but I also don't necessarily care about it. But I'll give it a shot. It's one of those things. Like, I don't really care, but I'll give it a shot since it's there. So, we'll see.
4 first steps needs to be an absolute grand slam in a bunch of ways. 2 important ones. It needs to be a better representation of these characters than we have seen on screen before, and it needs to showcase a fresh side of what the Marvel Cinematic Universe can be. Fortunately for the first family, I think these are achievable goals. First off, let's look at the better representation of these characters. We don't know a lot about their personalities, but what we can read from their designs suggests they're going as close to the comics as possible. I loved Michael Chiklis' Thing as much as the next guy, but he looked like a guy in a big rubber suit. No shade, they worked with what they had. But if the live-action Thing looks anything like the design in this piece of promotional art, this will easily be the most physically faithful version of the character to date, and that bodes incredibly well for the rest of the family and their rogues gallery. But put looks aside for a second, the Fantastic Four can be deep characters. And again, no shade on Ioan Gruffudd or Jessica Alba, but the cast of this thing is perhaps the strongest of any Marvel film. They're all pretty much breakout stars. You've got a Reed and Pedro Pascal coming off an award-nominated performance as Last of Us' Joel, then Pieces of a Woman's Vanessa Kirby as Sue, Stranger Things' Season 4 and Gladiator 2's Joseph Quinn as Johnny Storm, and then the Bears have been Moss Bacharach as The Thing, and they're joined by Ralph Ineson, Julia Gardner, Natasha Lyonne, Paul Walter Hauser, and John Malkovich. I saw someone say it before, but it's true. If this was the cast of an A24 movie, people would be losing their mind. So between fantastic visuals and inspired casting, this group has so much potential to bring a version of these four to the screen that captures everything comic fans love about the characters. But then how are they doing something new? Well, the story is set in an alternate universe that's some sort of 1960s retro future tech utopia, and that story is being crafted by an admittedly large team. It's written by, among others, Avatar 2 and Kingdom for the Planet of the Apes' Josh Friedman, Transformers 1 and Thor Ragnarok's Eric Pearson, and Carnival Row and WandaVision's Peter Cameron. This is a team of writers capable of inventing or expanding upon exciting new worlds and societies.
Those are all strong writers.
And they are being directed by WandaVision's Matt Shakman. These are projects with impeccable production design, and couldn't make this feel like something we've never seen in the Marvel Cinematic Universe before, the same way that Ragnarok and WandaVision were breaths of fresh air. The leaked D23 trailer seemed to serve largely to showcase the Fantastic Four's new world by taking these familiar TV settings like a documentary and a dating game and a kids' TV show and using them to contextualize these characters, have them fill familiar archetypes. I think that's really clever. If this goes right, Fantastic Four First Steps could be Marvel's next Guardians of the Galaxy or Black Panther type hit, one that opens up a new corner of the universe and attracts creatives who wouldn't otherwise have any interest in these movies. And the great thing about the Fantastic Four is there is so much ground yet to cover compared to everything in Marvel besides the X-Men. Take those other two I just mentioned. According to the Marvel Fan and Wiki, which is really good about this stuff, Rocket Raccoon has the most comic appearances of any OG Guardian with 423. T'Challa has 1,234 comic appearances. The Thing has 2,370. There are a lot of Fantastic Four stories left to tell. Speaking of T'Challa.
Okay, I'm gonna be optimistic about that one too. It looks fun. I'm definitely gonna go see it. Am I gonna be blown away by it? I don't think so. But I do think it's going to be a fun movie. I think it's going to be overall positive. Like they mentioned, really good writers, really good cast. Very interesting concept for what they're doing with it. So if it's done right, could be really, really good. The thing about the Fantastic Four is that they're a very goofy team. Like the Avengers, they're solid. The X-Men, they're solid. But like the Fantastic Four is goofy in the way that it's presented. So I kind of hope that this movie does kind of have that goofiness to it. In 2016, I actually pitched my own idea for a Fantastic Four movie, and it had like Seth Rogen as Reed Richards, Jonah Hill as Dr. Doom, and James Franco as Johnny Storm, and just a bunch of other fun characters. Maybe like Danny McBride as the Thing. You could just go deep into it and just be really goofy and silly and just make it like super raunchy. It sounded like a fun idea at the time. Maybe one day we'll still see that, but we'll give this one a shot, see how it goes.
Before I started writing this video, I didn't really know what Eyes of Wakanda was. And that's because 1, it's not really based off any specific comic, and 2, Marvel's been pretty tight-lipped on this one. Here's what we know.
I never even heard of this.
Produced by Ryan Coogler, although not that other thing he seemed to be working on, which was an Okoye spinoff or something. Who knows what happened to that? It's created by Todd Harris, an artist who has worked on many Marvel storyboards, including for both Black Panthers and even the Wakanda Voices comic. It's an animated anthology set in the past that seems to chronicle the adventures of historical Black Panthers we have otherwise not yet met. It's 4
cool.
issues. We've seen a tiny bit, and it looks completely different from the What If style and the X-Men 97 and the Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man styles. We don't know which Black Panthers will show up. Apparently, there's a new character named Nori in there somewhere, and also, alleged spoilers, an Iron Fist will show up in at least one episode, but not Danny Rand. It looks very cool, and while I wish it had at least a full 8-episode season, this feels like the kind of passion project that people will get excited about once they see more, and then who knows, maybe a second season will be bigger.
That's what they're doing.
Speaking of excitement leading to longer seasons, let's talk about a spin-off from What If Season 1.
Okay. I never heard of that till now. Looks interesting. I might check it out. There you go.
In 2025, Marvel is continuing its somewhat consistent tradition of releasing spooky Disney Plus stuff around Halloween. This started in 2022 with Werewolf by Night and continued this year with Agatha All Along. And in Halloween 2025, we're getting an entire series of Marvel Zombies. Alright, entire series is a bit generous since it's also only 4 episodes, but still better than nothing. Since this one is also quite late in the year, we don't know much, but we do have some promotional art that gives us a sense for which characters are involved. And like What If Season 3, it's the Phase 4 and 5ers. One thing that some people, myself included, are very excited about, this is one of the few 2025 projects with some Eternals. We've got Icarus confirmed and probably others. We've also got Kingo showing up in What If, and I wouldn't be shocked if the MCU's most famous Bollywood star also had something to do with the last Marvel project of 2025, which we'll get to. Another fun thing about zombies, it's R-rated, so that's neat. Probably gonna mostly be characters getting ripped limb from limb, but I wouldn't mind an F-bomb or two. And this does continue the story that began in the What If Zombies episode from season 1, so we're starting with most of the Avengers gone, a zombified Thanos, and still no Thor. I feel like this and What If are really pushing the MCU forward past Endgame. Spending more time with alternate versions of these new characters will make the real ones feel like staples of the universe, as important as Captain America or Iron Man, and that's what's going to keep the MCU fresh. Also, Blade is debuting in Marvel Zombies, but as Moon Knight, because that's where we are with Blade right now.
And that leaves one big project to finish out 2025.
Okay, so my thoughts on Marvel Zombies is I don't get the concept. When I first saw the comic book, I thought it looked dumb. When I saw the drops for the one What If that they did Marvel Zombies on, it looked lame. I'm glad people like Marvel Zombies, apparently. But for me, I think it's a dumb concept, and I think it should have never been made. I know that might be a hot take. I'll probably get some hate for that. That's fair. I completely understand. I just think it looks dumb. So, that's just my opinion, though. We'll keep going.
Closing out the year, I have really high hopes for Wonder Man. For people who are not familiar, in the comics, Simon Williams is a trust fund kid who gets incredible ionic superpowers, but then dies and comes back to life a bunch. He's usually an Avenger, and he's been in relationships with Carol and Wanda. He hangs out with Beast, but what he is probably mostly known for is taking a break from avenging and becoming an actor. And that idea seems to be the pitch behind the Wonder Man series that's showing up at the end of 2025. Simon Williams is an actor who seems to be trying to get the role of Wonder Man in some sort of movie. Whether he has superpowers at this point has yet to be seen, but I can see it working both ways. Either he has the powers and is trying to cash in on them and needs to learn to use his powers for good or something, or maybe Simon lies on his resume to make it seem like he has superpowers so he gets the part of a superpowered character. I'm not sure how that lie would work, like maybe based on some misunderstood public display. People think he has superpowers and he just goes with it and uses it to get ahead in Hollywood. Think Chicken Run or Rango or Road to El Dorado. Or it could be something completely different. Either way, I think Marvel is pretty strong when it comes to comedy, and they've got Andrew Guest, one of the writers behind some episodes of 30 Rock, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and Community working on this one. And Guest did not just write any Community episode, he wrote, among others, Fistful of Paintballs and Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. And this is an area of the MCU I am really curious about. What is entertainment like in a universe full of actual superheroes? We've seen it in the background, like the movies that everybody's watching on the plane in Spider-Man Far From Home or the Steve Rogers musical. It is my favorite kind of world building, the stuff that The Boys does so well. So I want to see Marvel's take on it. And then the cast for this one, we've got basically live action superhero Yahya Abdul-Mateen II as Simon. Then Ben Kingsley's back as Trevor Slattery, who appears to be Simon's acting coach. Ed Harris is playing Simon's agent. And then Demetrius Gross is Simon's brother Eric, who becomes a supervillain eventually. Listen, there's no guarantee this one is good, but I've been really hoping for something in the vein of She-Hulk, and this feels as close as we're gonna get. Plus, once he's introduced, Simon can play a lot of roles that he usually does in the comics. He's the Avengers pacifist. He's Vision's brain twin, and he's a founding member of the West Coast Avengers, a team that's shaping up nicely over the last few years. So what does all this mean? I don't know. While there are some movies and shows that it sure would be nice if they worked, there are a few that absolutely need to for this saga to be a success. Fantastic Four First Steps and Daredevil Born Again specifically have a lot riding on their shoulders. Thunderbolts and Wonder Man look like they could be fun surprises, and if the rest are good, that's a nice bonus. So I guess what this really means is you're going to have a lot of stuff to watch in 2025. And a lot of it is going to be streaming. So you want to make sure that your internet connection is safe, but also fast.
So when it comes to Wonder Man, it looks interesting. I think it looks like it's an intriguing premise, but I could also see it becoming somewhat of a She-Hulk situation too. Now, for those of you who may not know, I didn't hate She-Hulk because I knew what I was going to see, but I completely understand the people who did hate it, right? Like, I get that. Just for me personally, I knew what it was before I jumped in, and so I wasn't so blindsided when it was kind of like lame, right? But it's like it's a silly lame, you know what I mean? So if they can do that again, I'm okay with it. At this point, the MCU is pretty just all over the place, so whatever, I guess, you know. A hot take for me, and I said this in plenty of other videos before, is I think that I don't mind the TV shows existing. I just kind of wish they could take these TV shows and cut them down into movies for easier binges in the future, because I'm not going to rewatch any of the shows again. You know, I'll watch them once and that's it, but I'm not going to rewatch them. I'm not going to add them to my binges of the MCU. I'd rather have them be in movie form, maybe a little less information, you know, trim the fat, all the extra stuff taken out effectively. But just like the main story in a movie, and you could do that with any of them, I think. I think you could actually take, like, even WandaVision, and that had, like, 8 episodes? Or that had 10 episodes? I don't remember how many episodes that had. But there's plenty of fat in that show you could definitely trim, make a 3-hour movie, maybe a 3.5-hour movie type of thing. I would like to see them do that more. And I think that the shows would not only get, like, a second life, because people like me won't rewatch the show, you know. So the show is a one and done, and that's it. But I would watch it again if it was a movie. Even though you could say that by doing that, you remove some of the extra personality of shows. You'll cut some extra filler elements that you might need. I think that it's okay to give consumers options of what versions they want to watch. It's the same thing of, like, we did a video the other day where we talked about a theatrical release versus a director's edition release. It's like, why can't I have both? You know? So, like I said, might be a hot take, but if I can get all these shows in movie form, I'd actually prefer it. But like I said, that's just me. But there you go, guys. That's the end of this video. Great video, Nando. How do you guys feel about 2025 in the MCU? Are you like me, where you're still a fan of the MCU, but you don't necessarily care about it? You just kind of watch it because it's there, and there's the occasional good thing. Or are you a super fan? You're still on board. You think that the MCU is just as good as it was since day one. You think it's just as good as it was since Endgame. Or have you already quit the MCU, and have any of these projects kind of brought you back into the fold, or made you more interested in potentially getting back into the fold? Let me know in the comments below. Which one are you most excited for? Let us know down below. Make sure to like, subscribe, turn notifications for more, and of course, click my other videos here if you want to check out more. I'll catch you guys later. Peace.